So around 8 months ago, we went over the 256 Winchester Magnum, a round that utilized a 357 Magnum casing that was neck down to a 257 diameter bullet, and I had made mention that it was weird there wasn't any revolvers produced for the caliber, at least in large numbers, given its parent case was the 357 Magnum, and as a lot of you guys let me know, there was good reason for that. And that reason right there is why we have the specific, really weird round we'll be going over today in the first place. What's up, guys? Skip Africanus here, and welcome back to another Cartridge Week episode, this week featuring the very weird looking 22 Remington Jet Magnum. So now before we get into the history, use, and all that stuff of this really weird looking cartridge, we'll first do what we always do and take a look at the head stamp, which on the top we have PPU, that is of course for the manufacturer, Privy Partisan, and on the bottom we have 22 Rem Jet Mag for the caliber, of course, 22 Remington Jet Magnums. Now during the 1950s there was an interest in various 22 Wildcat revolver chamberings, one such example being the 224 Harvey K-Chuck chambered guns. And seeing this, Remington and Smith & Wesson would develop the 22 Jet, releasing it with the Model 53 revolver in 1961. The gun would be met with some reasonable success, however, funny enough, despite the cartridge being designed solely for revolver use in mind, it would find even greater success in single-shot rifles and pistols, specifically the Thompson Contenders. As given those have no cylinder gap, they allowed for the cartridge to achieve much higher velocities than in a revolver platform. And although this round was designed for revolver use in mind, the Model 53s would still suffer from some of the same problems that plagues revolvers in bottlenecked calibers, and that problem being case setback that would jam up the cylinder, as well as extraction issues. So now, bottleneck or not, revolvers will experience to some capacity the case setting back as it's fired. This is normally not an issue on, straight wall casings like say 357 Magnum, as although the case gets set back, it can be pushed forward. However, on bottlenecks, if the casing is expanding as it's setting back, then that means certain portions of the case are going to expand much larger than they should. Essentially, say, parts of the neck are going to expand to shoulder portions. And now the casing is going to struggle to be pushed forward when it needs to. And this also, of course, means that when it's pushed forward, it's going to be a much tighter fit as the brass is squeezed back into the cylinder, which can later lead to the previously mentioned extraction issues. And case setback on bottlenecked rounds in particular tends to be a little extra than what would be experienced with straight wall casings, given you have this little hump that gases can more easily push back on, at least for the very few split seconds that it's able to go there before the brass expands. The 22 Jet's odd cone shape comes about in order to eliminate that hump. Now, that being said, as much thought as was put into the cartridge, the Model 53 still did have issues with the case setback, with one trick I've heard at least a few times was to have the cylinders bone dry, as lubrication tended to make the problem of case setback a lot more frequent. Aside from this, another big issue faced, in particular with this cartridge's high velocity, is forcing cone erosion, with cones said to begin eroding around the 1500 round mark. That's assuming, of course, you are running factory ammunition, as some relatively hot loadings can see the forcing cone start to erode at around a mere 500 rounds. And as mentioned, all this stems from the relatively high velocity and pressures produced by the cartridge. However, all that being said, the Model 53s appear to be held in high regards by many that have and still do shoot them, and the cartridge overall wouldn't die super quick as a result of the Model 53 being discontinued in 1974. In fact, you can still find the ammo relatively easy today, with PPU being the only steady producers of the round and maintaining a relatively cheap round price overall. Now, all that being said, what exactly are the specs on this speedy little 22? Now, the 22 Jet utilizes a .222 diameter bullet in a neck-down 357 Magnum casing. Bullet weights tend to be around the 40 to 45 grain weight range. Now, with velocities on this cartridge in particular, it's important that we separate revolver and rifle velocities, as those two will be vastly different given cylinder gap. On average, with revolvers, you were looking at around 1900 to 2000 feet per second, and this is with a 6-inch barrel. Rifles, however, depending on barrel length, can achieve velocities upwards of about 3000 feet per second, making for quite the speedy little 22. But anyways, I think that is going to do it for this week's Cartridge Week episode featuring the 22 Remington Jet Magnum. I hope y'all enjoyed the video as much as I personally enjoyed making it, and I will see y'all next time.